Hello, hello to everybody out there in the beautiful world. It's a really happy year for everybody. Everything is going, there's good vibes all around, and I'm just soaking it up right now.
Richard moved to Switzerland. That's why he's saying that.
Yeah, I actually smashed my computer with a hammer, and I haven't been paying attention to the world for the past year. So I'm just going to assume that everything's tight. Everything's sick.
Hello, we're here to talk about Lord Byron.
Yeah.
Someone Richard ostensibly knows something about. Sorry, Richard, Lord of Cynics.
I am the Lord of the Cynics estate. Today we are here to talk about a wonderful person, another cool guy, another guy who didn't do anything wrong and was really nice and treated all the people in his life gently and with lots of love. Lord Byron. Now, for those of you who don't know, Lord Byron he's probably one of the most famous poets of all time, certainly the most famous one out of England to an extent. He was a huge part of the Romantic movement, the Romance era, which was a period of time after the Enlightenment where literature was trying to move away from this hard focus on truth and logic, this capital T supreme truth, some Freemasonry shit, and instead was attempting to come back to our roots, our emotions as humans, and the beauty of nature. Now, what Byron added to that was a bit of a shadowier edge, a darker edge. I should have just said that.
A little more black eyeliner material, yeah,
Yeah.
a little, and the black lipstick too.
He's the OG goth boy. He's like, I think he'd listen to The Cure if he was born in like 1970.
How many piercings?
How many piercings? One nipple piercing.
That's it?
Yep.
I think a bit more. I think some face piercings.
He's a little bashful. He's a little. I think he'd keep it on the DL. Although to be fair, he also was somebody who enjoyed controversy and getting eyes on him. So yeah, maybe he'd have like the full on, like, what do you call that? The doorknob, the door knocker, the bowl one that you put in your nose.
I'd never really stopped to think of a name for it, but I am in the Pacific Northwest now, so I better come up with something.
Yeah. And you're going in your grunge era. For those of you who don't know, Will is currently growing his hair out. It's hit his shoulders, and he's wearing nothing but flannels. And that's a very accurate and real description of his physical appearance. But yeah, so you might be wondering, Richard, why should I give a shit about Lord Byron? Well, aside from the fact that he has an incredibly fascinating and somewhat funny life, he's a bit of a Forrest Gump type. He contributed to modern literature in a very large way. Lord Byron created this kind of archetype that we nowadays call the Byronic hero. Now, the idea is he's not your traditional Superman. The Byronic hero is kind of cursed and melancholy and sad.
More Frank Miller Batman vibes.
Yeah, like a Cormac McCarthy character, which I think I've now mentioned Cormac McCarthy in every one of our episodes. So I've done my OCD.
I'm gonna go ahead
stitch.
And say that Byron is not a Cormac McCarthy character.
There's some Byronic heroes in there. I'd argue the kid in Blood Meridian could be described as Byronic.
I'm not qualified to weigh in on that one because I dropped Blood Meridian by like the 7th time that they used the N-word and brought up like a dehydrated human body part that someone was carrying around.
It is period accurate, and people then were dicks. People there were not super cool about race, believe it or not. Yeah, directly before the Civil War.
That's a really bold thing to point out, that before the Civil War there was racism. I mean, people don't think that, but it's true.
Not only was there racism, they were so deep into racism that they even divided the whites. If you were white but Catholic, you were a piece of shit, which I completely agree with.
Don't get me started on the Irish. Which side of the bus are you going on?
There we go. My bad. I almost closed that camera. No, the Irish are a despicable race of people and should be eliminated from the earth. Anyways, no, I'm just kidding. They're nothing like the Croatians.
He's just trying to make as much work for me as an editor as possible.
We should give Ireland to Croatia. That's what I've decided.
I don't know, man. The Irish are pretty into their own independence. They fought the British for literally hundreds of years, so they would not have to fuck with anyone. So
hey, shout out to Kneecap. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. By the way, if you're in the IRA and would like to meet my friend Richard, please reach out, williamingles@substack.com. Just, I know where he lives.
Yeah, the next time I turn the keys on my car will be the last seconds of my life.
At least you'll finally get a cinematic like Goodfellas ending that I'm sure you've always wanted. Yeah.
No, I want to be tarred and feathered. That's how I want to die. Or I want.
We've talked about this. You're fixated. Yeah. You're fixated on that.
Or I want a stripper to drop her giant BBL, I guess kind of synonymous, right on my head to crush it like a melon. Like that scene in Hereditary where they smash the old man's head with the mallet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're talking about Lord Byron. So I think we can just, long story short, if you like Batman, if you like vampires and erotic fiction, and if you like mailing your pubes to celebrities in an attempt to make them love you back, you're going to like Lord Byron and you're going to like this story.
By the way, audience, that will not work with me, so please don't try
it. Audience, it will work for me if you mail Will your pubes. So it will work for me. So I will be your friend in real life if you do that. And that's a promise. You can sue me if it doesn't happen. Actually, you can sue Will if it doesn't happen. Since I signed my W-2, I'm a worker here at William Incorporated.
Yeah, so, I'm getting my sole proprietorship going. Actually,
yeah,
I need to fill out my my DBA paperwork for the state of Oregon.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody, this is what we call tax humor. Do you like it? We're doing a weather balloon. We're trying it out. Tax humor. Comment if you like tax humor. Anyways, so Lord Byron, later in life would come to perceive his family as kind of cursed. And to be honest with you, probably right.
yeah. It might be fair.
We're going to talk about a couple of cool guys. Now, for those of you who don't know, Will and I already recorded one episode, but the audio was absolute dog piss. So we're doing this again. I used a lot of names in the first episode. I'm probably going to simplify it a little bit down to like his grandpa, his great uncle, yada, yada, yada. So
yeah, we're really going to just streamline this and look for like, crimes, incest, people dying, terrible diseases, lies, insanity. We're going to try and boil it down to the essentials of drama this time.
Now, in 1540, Byron's on his family's paternal side, his ancestors were gifted a former abbey called Newstead Abbey to be their property. It was given to them by Henry VIII, who is a funny little guy. Mommy didn't give him his tendies. The Catholic Church didn't give him a divorce. He slammed his fist on the table and created an entirely new religion that exists to this day, called Anglicanism. The Church of England.
Yes,
God damn it.
Yes, the Church of England. Yes, Henry VIII did that because he needed to get a fucking divorce and was also like an amateur theologian. Like he really thought he could keep up with like all the other bishops and so on, and he sort of fucked with the Reformation. Was like, let's do it here, but like let's keep the robes, like let's keep the incense, let's keep even a little bit of the Latin, and then he you
mean
he
all
started
the coolest shit?
Yeah, I mean the real reason wasn't to like work out some kind of unique theological interpretation he'd been working on in his philosophical hours. He wanted all of the Catholic Church's shit, all of the monasteries, all of the land, the money, all that shit in England. He just repossessed it. He was like, the church had owned this monastery and it owned, a couple, 100,000 acres, whatever around here. Mine. That's mine, and I'm going to sell it to nobles and use it to rearm mostly. And then my daughter Elizabeth is going to inherit and build one of the world's largest navies. Isn't that fucking fun? Anyway,
well, and it's at this time the British Navy was actually a pretty powerful entity under the leadership of Nelson. What's his name? Full name Horatio Nelson.
Yeah, I think Admiral Horatio Nelson. Yeah.
Who is regarded as one of the greatest naval commanders of all time, but unfortunately, we're not talking about him. So, Lord Byron was born George Gordon Byron in January 22nd, 1788. God, I'm a fucking mushmouth today. It's all that caffeine.
All right, 1788. So he, like, for example, Beethoven was born 1770. So they're sort of close. Immanuel Kant is like 30 years old at this point. So we're kind of like, we need to tip over the Enlightenment. We need to tip over the classical era in music. Like, we're kind of like turning an aesthetic and intellectual corner. Things are about to get way more raw, way more unformed and individual. There's going to be some breaks from tradition. Anyway, proceed.
He was born in 1788. And something notable is nowadays we know him as Lord Byron because by the time he died at the age of 36, he was a landowner and he was what they would call a peer or a nobleman, but he wasn't born one. He was not destined to be a lord. So the story is, first of all, his dad is a piece of shit, and it's almost hilarious. In fact, it is. Byron's grandfather was he had a number of children. Byron's dad was the oldest. So in theory, Byron's dad should have gotten the land. But something about his dad is he was a guy by the name of Mad Jack, John Mad Jack Byron. And you might be thinking to yourself, listeners, Mad Jack. So yeah, he was like a stable, cool dude, right? Like he was a good dad and stuff.
That's how you get a nickname like that, yeah.
Yeah, by being a great father and an honest lover. Unfortunately, he was neither of those things. He was sent, I want to say, to France to study, to be in the Navy someday, because his father was. And he developed a very bad addiction to whoring about and gambling. And he accrued.
This is every dad in this time period, by the way, is drinking, whoring, and gambling. Yeah, like it's just you fall for one of them, two of them, or all three. And there no dads in the late 18th century were immune to this at all.
No.
So
he was even a terrible father by their standards, though, because typically it was law at the time in England that when you get divorced, the father gets full custody of the kids. Not Mad Jack. Even the court was like, not Mad Jack, dude.
We're gonna make an exception on this one. He's Mad Jack, dude. You can't let him have kids.
So Mad Jack gets cut off by his father for accruing massive debts, and because of that, the next in line to take the household was Lord Byron's great uncle. To take Newstead Abbey. His great uncle was also a shitty person and terrible with money, but we'll get to that. So Mad Jack eventually meets a lady named Amelia Osborne and has 3 children with her. Amelia Osborne, by the way, is not Lord Byron's mother. It is the mother of Lord Byron's half-sister, Augusta, who we will later go on to have a sexual affair with. And it's all funny because that kind of runs in the family. That's something that happens to Mad Jack too. But anyways, eventually Amelia dies, and Mad Jack, he just ran through her money, and he's poor as shit. He doesn't have his inheritance anymore, and he needs money. By the way, at some point in time before he married Amelia, he was also a gigolo. Like, this is how desperate times got for him. But it kind of taught him how to seduce heiresses. And on that note, eventually he goes on to, I want to say 1884, less than a year after Amelia dies, he meets a woman named, Catherine Gordon, who will eventually be the mother of Byron. And he has one child with her, the titular, George Gordon Byron. Now, almost immediately after having Byron, Mad Jack just eviscerates her estate. Like, he takes all of her goddamn money, and he basically abandons Byron immediately. Byron probably saw his dad. Well, he never really knew his dad, because when Byron was 3 years old, Mad Jack dies. Now, Mad Jack, later, Byron will reflect on it, and he will insist that his father died by suicide. He was just so emotionally distraught. The truth is, he probably died of consumption or something like that. He was reportedly coughing up a bunch of blood. He was living fast and loose. He started fucking his own sister and stealing her money. He's he's bananas. He was certified, according to the DSM-5, bananas. And
pneumonia finally caught up with him. End of story. Because, I was going to ask, did Mad Jack impart any of his, let's call it life wisdom, any of his Three Musketeer adventures to young Lord Byron? And the answer would be no.
Yeah. But the nice thing is, apparently being a rotten bastard is genetic. So he didn't inherit it.
Has your view of Byron soured since last we spoke? Have you learned more things about him that you hate? I mean, you came in with Epstein, and then there was a rotten bastard. That bad for Byron?
So here's the thing about Byron. There are a lot of qualities, all joking aside, a lot of qualities about him that I do admire. His poetry is beautiful, at least his later poetry. He's an adventurer. He eventually, near the end of his life, participates in the Greek Revolution, and he never ends up seeing combat, but he does donate a shit ton of money. He has admirable qualities, but the listeners will probably realize this as I go on throughout his life. He has horrible relationships with women consistently. It seems like after he has, once that very short honeymoon period ends, every single time he treats them like they're disposable. He discards them. The only woman that he has a romantic relationship with that he seems to have a elongated infatuation and respect for is his half sister Augusta, and that's it, which is kind of fitting for him because it's
probably because she reminds him of him, the only thing he can truly respect himself.
Yeah, I would like to say I don't actually draw any comparisons between Epstein and George Byron, because I do think that Epstein was substantially worse than Lord Byron.
He has no redeeming qualities. That up.
Yeah. But so at the age of 3, the Mad Jack dies, and they're kind of fucked. They don't have a whole lot of money, him and his mom, and they kind of have to just jump and live in flats above shops and stuff, which is well beneath their, I guess at the time you would see it as their stature. Catherine Gordon had her own estate, or had. So did Byron, but the horrible mismanaging of their money caused them to live a more common life. Now, around 10, something interesting happens. I mentioned that Mad Jack lost his inheritance because he was just an insane person. So that inheritance ended up going to Lord Byron's great uncle, his grandfather's younger brother, who was regarded as the Wicked Lord. He was the 5th Lord. People fucking hated this guy. There were stories about him having like orgies, him murdering people, him being a complete degenerate. Now, we don't know if that's true or not. It's, whatever. But that was the story. And part of the reason why people hated him is because one thing we do know happened is he shot his neighbor over a dispute over who had more game on their land. They were sitting there getting shithoused at a bar, and what a stupid argument to have.
No, Richard, you don't understand. Like, this is what you have for amusement at the time. I mean, you can't go home and play Xbox. It's just chickens and tapestries back at the house. So you go out in public and you pick fights with strangers because you need a little excitement in your life.
Yeah. Well, if there's anything I've learned from reading about the Old West, it's that sometimes you just got to shoot a dude's head off to feel something.
Yeah.
To feel anything at all.
I have been, watching Deadwood in preparation for our discussion of Wild Bill Hickok.
Oh, yeah.
I just got through that scene where Al Swearingen has to pass a kidney stone through his dick and almost dies because his lungs apparently fill up with urine. And it's no medical cakewalk to be alive today, but to be that guy in 1888. Dude.
Oh yeah. I honestly would never ever want to be born even a day earlier than I was. Just like everything.
Yeah. I was discussing with a friend today. It's like, the reason that I am not a conservative is because conservatives are people who read history and go, man, that would be so cool to bring that back. Or reading history books and going like, that was awesome. Those were the days. And I literally don't know how it's possible to read history and come away with that impression. Yeah, really fucking don't. So anyway,
something I think about historically, whenever I read anything, God, imagine how much the food fucking sucked back then.
Dude, yeah, I've often said that if you sent me back and I had to do commerce with cavemen or something, early hunter-gatherer bands, if I had to amaze them and dazzle them with my magical powers, I wouldn't bring a laser pointer or a phone or an iPod. I would bring back like double stuff Oreos. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
imagine making the jump from eating, fucking berries and little bits of squirrel and quite a lot of leafy, like ferny greens that taste like nothing. Imagine making the jump from that to a fucking full fat, like double stuff Oreo. It would
Oh.
be like the scene where the apes touch the monolith in 2001.
It starts slapping the ground like Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I'd put the Oreo on their mouth like a communion wafer. They would be permanently altered. Yeah.
Imagine, oh yeah, well, imagine going back in time. You teleport, you float down like Jesus Christ onto a ship that's been at sea for 2 months. All of these just disgusting, smelly sailors have been eating nothing but hardtacks, and you give them a fucking Cheeto. Like
Yeah, you're
that
their
would be
god now. I mean,
you.
you're
Yeah,
you're an intermediary to the divine for
yeah. I'm
sure.
like No Face from Spirited Away,
Yes,
where I just put my
right.
hand up and they fall out of it, like, and they eat out of my hand like a horse. It's beautiful.
Have you guys
I
ever
like.
tried Cool Ranch Doritos?
Holy shit. They immediately shoot your head off. You get nailed to a cross. Yeah. I was about to make a joke and then I realized it wasn't even funny. It was just weird and disgusting.
So no change, really.
Yeah, well, I was going to say I lie down on my side and expose my 8 teats and let them feed on the hot Cheetos. No, I thought about it. I'm like, I don't really need to say that out loud.
You've already declared a genocidal intent against the Irish, which is just a huge fucking mistake for you, by the way. I mean, pissing off the Irish is a very, very bad idea.
I didn't advocate for killing all of them. I think they should all be rounded up, enslaved, and given to a Croatian. Once again, I hope Croatia hasn't done anything fucked up because I'm not paying attention and I know nothing about Croatia. Also, to all the Irish people out there, it's okay. I don't actually hate you. We're just having a goof. We're talking about all of the eradication of your culture. We're just having a bit of a laugh.
To all the Irish people out there, the Guinness that we get in the States sucks. I don't know what the fuck you guys do to it as you send it out the back door of your country. But when I've been in, Dublin and stuff and had Guinness, it's way fucking better than even the stuff that's on draft here in the US. So I think we're getting the shit end of the Guinness stick. And I mean, I get it. I understand. Keep the good shit for yourself, of course. But like the stuff you're sending over here is really bad for the brand. It's just not good anymore. So like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like Mexican tequila. It's just there is a metaphysical wall in between of all of our countries. It's the enshittification wall. The second it passes onto U.S. soil, it just tastes like a hand sanitizer.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think countries that have sense about them will slowly start to retreat economically from the United States as it collapses, implodes into a black hole vortex of all of the facts about itself, which it refuses to acknowledge, collectively coming to weigh so much that it drags the social fabric past singularity and into full-blown third world status. So I think that's like again, like with the Irish not giving us the good Guinness anymore, like I understand. Like I get it. I'm not mad at you for that. That you just have to know that's what's going on.
Do you think this is like karma for Manifest Destiny? Like an imperialism?
I think karma for Manifest Destiny would be like Mexico and Canada invading us simultaneously, like Poland in World War II, and then our country being split into 4 pieces like we did to Germany at the end of World War II. I think that would like be the beginning of like a fair reckoning for Manifest Destiny. That would be like phase 1A of a 16-step program to remove the vicious influence of the United States from the planet. Yeah, and
then in
tell
50 years,
tell him I said it. Tell him I fucking said it.
And then in 50 years, I'll have to be like making shoes to send to people in Russia and China. I'll just be like, oh shit, I guess this is what it was like. Fuck.
Yeah, yeah. I guess this is what it's like, man sitting in air conditioned room, getting to work with, for example, lights that don't flicker.
Yeah. Also, speaking of air conditioning, you know what? Fuck this. Let's get back on track. I don't want to talk about my air conditioning right now. Jeez.
Okay, all right. Listen, so Byron is like, he's being born. He's squeezed out of his mom. His dad fucks off and dies when he's 3.
Yep.
And so who raises him? His mom?
A couple of people. So really quickly, when we last left off, we were talking about the Wicked Lord. I won't dwell on him too much. Basically, he has Newstead Abbey. He handles it financially terribly. He cuts down a bunch of the forests to sell the timber. He ends up leasing shit out to coal miners for just dog shit money, like barely anything. And eventually, he fucks off and dies too. But fortuitously for George Gordon Byron, Lord Byron, the Wicked Lord's son dies around the same time. So the title of Lord of Newstead Abbey ends up going to Byron when he's 10 years old. Now, you asked who's raising him. He ends up going to, it's mostly his mom at this point, but he ends up going to Newstead Abbey with his mom. And Newstead Abbey at the time was a fucking mess. It was overgrown. It looked like shit, but Byron loved it. Byron was he's kind of a chubby kid. He was very shy, very reserved. And part of the reason why is because he was born with a club foot. So he was kind of insecure about that. He couldn't participate in as many physical activities. He ended up discovering a love for swimming, which would become a big part of his entire life. He loved it and was surprisingly incredibly talented, as we'll find later in this episode, at swimming, and long distance swimming in particular. But he goes to Newstead Abbey. Go on.
So Jock is out. So now it's down to nerd or theater kid, or I guess band kid. Yeah, like which phenotype, like which group is he falling into?
I'd say right now he's nerd, but eventually he'll have his glow up. He'll bounce back.
Right.
Yeah. So Byron loved Newstead Abbey, but it was deemed as kind of unsuitable for a child. At this point, it's like 1798. He's 10, and he ends up being sent to live with a lady who would shape his personality in the future in a very negative way, Agnes Grey. Agnes Grey was his caretaker and his teacher, and she was a very, very, very strict Calvinist. In a time where Calvinism was very severe. Obviously, it's changed and improved since then, but they were incredibly strict. But unfortunately, Agnes Grey was also a hypocrite. She was a horrible drunk. It's funny, I was looking at my notes, and I wrote my notes when I was incredibly drunk. And in the line with Agnes Grey, I wrote...
Great minds.
Yeah, I was describing her in my notes, and I forgot, and I went by and read it, and for some reason in my notes, I say, she's a drunk floozy! ! And I was like, Richard was really pissed off.
Wow. You used the F word again?
I used the F word that people haven't used in 30 years, maybe more. Actually, 50 years, whatever. But this ends up developing kind of a perspective in Byron's mind. Two different things.
Well, it's just to be clear, like she's beating him, right?
Well, she's beating him, and she also, sensitive topic incoming, sexually abuses him. And it kind of shapes him. It is this rippling, lasting effect well into his adult life. Two things. One, he does not like Christianity very much. He thinks it's incredibly hypocritical, and he becomes kind of like a rebel after that. He likes undermining Christian values and kind of mocking them, because I think for him it was cathartic. I think it was therapeutic. In addition to that, he develops this kind of permanent distrust of women. From then on, at no point will he have a healthy romantic sexual relationship with women. He did have a couple platonic friendships with women who he greatly respected. For example, Mary Shelley. But the second it turned romantic, things got sour fast. But anyways, eventually he is emancipated from her care, and he's in a dark place. He's very unhappy. He's a very gothic, sad child, and I don't blame him. What he experienced was horrible. But things start to kind of like go upwards when eventually he is sent to a public school. What was it called? Harrow. There we go. Harrow. Now, Harrow I was reading about it, and in the book that I was reading about Byron, which I should shout out, it's Byron, Life and Legend by Fiona McCarthy. If any of you are really academically interested in Byron, this book's the shit. It's the tits. It's awesome. But
that was very poetic, dude.
I know. I'm a bit of a poet myself.
Was that iambic hexameter? That was amazing.
It's the tits.com. It's the tits McGee. And it's the tits for me as well. But so he goes to Harrow School, and this is when Byron starts experiencing true happiness. Now, at this time, a lot of romantic writers are peers. You know, they have lands. They're a part of the elite, so to speak, and a lot of them speak about these schools very fondly, as if it's the best time in their life. And honestly, I don't blame them. It's kind of like Harry Potter. Like they go there.
Let me jump in here. So listeners may know a British movie called If, and it's like if ... It was made in, I think, the late 70s, the early 80s. It had a young Malcolm McDowell in it, from his Clockwork Orange era. You could kind of see it as like sort of a parallel to Clockwork Orange. And it just talks about like these two cultures where on the one hand, like, you know, the British public school system is like, oh my gosh, you know, it's Hogwarts, you know, we're sleeping in 4-poster beds and there's falconry club and we go on horse rides through the woods and, you know, it's fucking magic and childhood and we're reading, you know, Cicero all day. And then on the other hand, it's hazing and ritual sexual humiliation.
Yeah.
And the older students being, you know, horribly brutal to the younger kids. And then in the movie, If, this rage at the like two tracks of society creates like these juvenile delinquents, and I won't spoil the rest of the movie, but yeah, that rage comes out. So anyway,
So when it comes to Byron, like it's very possible that stuff happened, but he never really speaks ill of Harrow or later Trinity College, which is, you know, where he goes to when he's older. But yeah, he just talks about it like it's paradise on earth. And I can see why, because something about Catherine Gordon, Byron's mother, is that she was allegedly a very severe woman and was prone to mood swings. She would shower him with praise. She would love him. And then other times she would get furious at him and call him lame, you know, like basically a cripple. She would mock him and she'd call him a brat and stuff. And Byron fucking hates his mom. Well, he doesn't hate her, but he speaks very ill of her. You know, what I just said about her comes from his writing. He blames her for his clubbed foot because it was technically treatable at the time, but they didn't have any money because their dad blew it all. And that's the thing, is Byron speaks about his dad like he's a fucking Greek hero. And his mom, he just shits on
his dad,
her.
who he doesn't know fucking anything about personally.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like it's kind of that classic case of like you hate the parent that stays because they're the one that has to parent you and they can't be fun and rainbows all the time. So yeah, just to Catherine Gordon's credit, that might not be an authentic representation because she did have a very difficult life and was screwed over very hard by good old Mad Jack. But we don't need to dwell on the schooling that much. Around 1805, he goes to Trinity College. So at this point, he's like 17. And in Cambridge College, that's when he really starts to kind of like come in. Like he starts to, the Byron that we all know nowadays starts to appear. Like his first year there, he's still kind of a chunky monkey. He's a little shy guy, even though he's slowly starting to come out of his shell. But after his second year, he comes back and it's, you know, Stella got her groove back. Like
the hormones have kicked in. He's been away from his family long enough. He's got his mojo working.
Yeah. Well, he also starts exercising. And unfortunately, he develops an issue that he'd have for the rest of his life. He also develops an eating disorder. He would starve himself for long periods of time. And he had this he was very particular about food. And also he couldn't stand watching a woman eat. It was just the most disgusting thing ever. Like, Lord Byron would have a lot of trouble dating nowadays, I think. He's a strange man. But he comes back and he is, by description, beautiful. He's a very handsome man, and he starts to have a sexual awakening there, where he starts exploring same-sex relationships, and he also forms very, very, very intense and close bonds with a number of people. The most important one, and the one that I'll mention the most for the rest of the series, is a man by the name of John Hobhouse, who he's kind of funny when you put him next to Lord Byron, because they're very different. Lord Byron is very passionate, expressive, dramatic.
So Hobhouse, that's his friend. That's
Hobhouse
his buddy.
is the friend that he goes on the grand tour with.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah. So we now it's a buddy film. We've gone from like the sad, lonely child, then he gets his mojo. Now we're in a buddy film.
Yeah. Well, once he graduates from Trinity College and he actually goes on his grand tour, it's a fun buddy film, and we'll get into that. But so while he's there, it's funny. Also, like you also start to see his kind of rebelliousness come out. At some point at Trinity College, he's told that you're not allowed to have a dog, so he brings a bear instead. Wait. Oh, how clever. and
then from that time on, he becomes the guy with the bear. It's like, yeah.
And another thing is Catherine Gordon didn't really run Newstead Abbey, the estate. She had a lawyer that did it for him. And so he would correspond with his lawyer and be like, give me more booze all the time. They were fucking perpetually hammered.
That's like when college students like use their parents' credit card on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And they're just like, yeah, I would like a lamp and some frozen steaks and maybe also some new rugs for in here. And it just keeps going on. They're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, mom gave me the Target card for groceries, but I can also do cash back on the register. And that's how I buy weed.
Random example.
It's not. I did that one time and my mom immediately was like, Richard, what the fuck is this? And then I had to she immediately deactivated the card, which is a good idea because I'm a piece of shit. So
you're like, now I'm a grown up and I can buy weed with my own money.
Yeah, I get assistance one time, and 19-year-old Richard is such a scumbag that he's immediately like, this is my weed card. It worked one time. I got $10 out of it and then lost it.
That's the bottom of the USDA food pyramid. It's green on the bottom. It's yeah.
Well, and then I had to pay for my own groceries, so I guess I got what I deserve. Like I said, he forms very close relationships with people. And something that's interesting to note is that a lot of people in Byron's inner circle were aware of each other's same-sex attraction. Not all of them were gay naturally. John Hobhouse, from what I understand, there's no stories about him engaging in homosexuality. But Byron also has another friend named Charles Matthews. And we won't go into him too much, but something that's kind of telling about Charles Matthews is that he had a nickname, which was the Methodist, which you're probably, scratching your little chin, wondering why. And the reason why is because that was code. It was code because it sounded nothing like, it was a code for him being gay, basically. And naturally, it sounds nothing like being gay, and that's kind of the point. It's kind of like undercover cops trying to learn the code, like back in the 80s when they'd still do busts.
Yeah, the handkerchief code from the 18th century equivalent of the handkerchief code.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We got to name it after Christian denominations. It's not like, it's no longer like red handkerchief, back left pocket, green handkerchief, front right pocket. It's like, no, we're going to refer to like really like specific subdivisions of Protestant Christianity.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So Byron does have relationships with women during this time too, but they are kind of weird. Like there's this one period of time where
a poet being weird with women. No fucking way, dude.
Well, I shouldn't say weird because there's nothing wrong with his homosexuality, obviously. It's more like
no. I was talking about his interpersonal dynamic with some of these women because some of the stories you've already told me anyway.
And we'll get to those stories. The worst of them we'll get into next episode when we talk about his fame, like him just exploding and becoming successful. But he has an affair with a prostitute named Caroline, who I believe is around his age, maybe a year or two younger. But oftentimes when they're in public, he'll dress her up like a boy as a disguise. And you wonder a little bit like if that was part of the appeal. He also forms a romantic bond with a little guy. I almost call a little boy. It's not true. He was 2 years younger than him. But this younger man by the name of John Edelstein. And like he's kind of effeminate, kind of boyish. And Byron was all about John Edelstein, but it's funny, at some point John Edelstein's voice cracks.
Yeah.
And Byron's like, fuck off.
He's like, it sounds like Byron's just attracted to androgyny kind of across the board. Yeah.
Well, also I think something that he finds thrilling is I don't have any moral judgments for a lot of the stuff he does, because a lot of it isn't that bad by modern standards. There is stuff that he did that's very bad by modern standards, but I want to compartmentalize those two things. I think what he was attracted to was deviating away from British morality. You'll see that a lot more when he goes on his grand tour, because he specifically chooses very non-European places to go. And to explore his sexuality later in life in an environment where it's okay, or at the very least easier to get away with. He's attracted to an extent. A part of his personality is attracted to deviancy, is the best way I can describe it. So now, eventually, Byron graduates from Trinity College, and he's faced with a conundrum that I think we all are, which is, what the fuck do I do now? He has a couple options, right? He is a peer, so he could get into politics. He was a Whig at the time. I can't make that joke.
Just don't. Yeah, moving on.
So he was a Whig at the time, and he loved Napoleon Bonaparte. Funny enough, another thing that was telling is his aforementioned friend, Charles Matthews, was also nicknamed Citizen, which is basically the late 1700s equivalent of comrade, during the French Revolution.
That's for the French Revolution.
Which they all found very inspiring. And it's funny, Byron is, I mentioned before that he's kind of a hypocrite. He kind of hated the British government. He did have a sort of pride about him being Scottish, but for the most part, he hated empires, and he hated, imperialism, and how England was imposing its views and culture on the world. But at the same time, he loves Napoleon Bonaparte. He's what he likes.
Well, it's always like, at what stage of Napoleon's life are you in love with him? Like, Beethoven was in love with Napoleon right until he crowned himself emperor. And then Beethoven said, fuck this guy, and scratched his name out of the Third Symphony manuscript so hard it tore a hole in the fucking page. And, it's like, because there was Napoleon on the come up who was like a sort of Vladimir Lenin type character, a sort of people's champion, a guy that could, collectively defend France from the British and from the Prussians and shit. And there was a lot of hope behind Napoleon that he would bring the revolution to Europe, and kind of did accidentally by virtue of the fact that Napoleon's soldiers entering all these different territories, Spain and Prussia and so forth, they did bring the revolutionary fervor with them and spread it to the people there. But Napoleon just wanted power. Napoleon just wanted to be the emperor. He didn't give a fuck at all about democracy. And when Beethoven found that out, he said, nope, you misunderstood the assignment. But other people who just thought it was awesome that there was a guy with so much power, like Byron, I'm pretty sure he was into it just for the finger in the eye against the British, and against the fucking silk trouser wearing motherfuckers. Yeah, because Napoleon was also a bit of a finger in the eye for all the rich. So
I think that's absolutely true. But I also think that another angle of it, or another dimension of it, was that ultimately, Byron loved rebels and revolutions, and he hated imperialism, but what motivated his love for those things was that they're just good stories, and they're impressive figures. They cast a enormous shadow, so to speak. And so that's how Byron could simultaneously, well, actually you make a good point, because this is 1806 when Byron is 18. So I believe Napoleon was still first consul, although I don't know that for certain. He'd probably know better than I would, but
let me just check. I'll just check.
Yeah, also just to put a little pin in where we're at, 1806, Byron just graduated from college. He's 18 years old.
Nope. So Napoleon was crowned emperor on December 2nd, 1804.
Oh, well, in that case, Lord Byron is just a fucking hypocrite.
The 11th of Frimaire, year 13, by virtue of the French Republican calendar. So anyway.
Okay, yeah. In that case, Napoleon's been God Emperor for 2 years now, and Byron's just like, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah, no. So that was my point. So, like, Isaiah Berlin was this philosopher who he was featured on the show for his discussion of romanticism, and he talks about Byron, and he talks about how in the form of hero worship that like the Romantic era engages in specifically, and Byron engages in especially, you're not really worshiping someone for what they believe, and you're not even necessarily worshiping someone for what they pull off. What you're really in awe of someone for, if you're Byron, is how far someone takes their beliefs, how deeply someone invests and sticks to the bit, no matter what, even if your beliefs are terrible, even if your beliefs are wrong, even if what you're doing isn't good or doesn't work. What matters is passion and conviction and pushing it as far as you possibly can,
which is very romantic. It's just fair. And I guess it isn't. I called Byron...
the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment hero is the hero of careful reasoning, and the person who is out to demonstrate to the world how to set themselves free through the independent, correct use of their own reason.
Yeah, like a Benjamin Franklin type.
And the Enlightenment also aims mostly at the conquest of nature, the subordination of nature to man. How can we, create better windmills and turn this river into a source of power or whatever? The Romantic movement sees the sublime in nature and sees nature as a force outside of and potentially greater than humanity. And there's a shift in emphasis that happens there, because when the Enlightenment mind, sees Yosemite National Park, probably what they see is like, this could be a great state to add to the United States of America. We could grow a lot of fucking shit here, whereas when the Romantic sees Yosemite, they think, wow, this is beauty on a prehistoric timescale, and I would want to preserve it and keep it the way it is. So, yeah.
Well, and I that's a good point. And I previously called Byron a bit of a hypocrite, but I don't think that's entirely true, because I think ultimately Byron, by his own admission, would say that he doesn't care if a person's good or evil. I think that for Byron, it is the fact that they have inserted themselves into history and are a name that people who will never meet them still know. Like somebody who has had a lasting impact, which is also part of the reason why he was so drawn to the ancient writings of the Middle East and Greece too. Because I think he likes that hero's story. And also, to their credit, there are some complicated heroes in Greek mythology and in Islamic mythology as well. Like, there are people that weren't just straightforward, like, good-hearted supermen. They were a bit tortured too. Especially Greek ones. But so he's 18 years old. It's 1806. He decided he doesn't want to get into politics. And so he didn't really want to be a poet that bad, but he had been writing poetry. And so at some point he decides that he wants to try his hand at publishing it. And that's when he publishes his first collection of poetry, which he calls Fugitive Pieces. Now, I don't know if anybody listening has read it. I've read it in preparation for this. It when it comes out, actually, it doesn't come out yet. Like, it's not really that good. it's
a first try.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like, I didn't find myself cringing reading it, but what it is very unexceptional. Like, Byron was never going to become the person he is, making these poems. And part of the reason why is they're kind of all the same. Like, they're almost entirely just about like him falling in love and then love lost, and because that's all he knows. He's 18. He spent his entire life as like a little bit of a rich schoolboy, and he doesn't have a lot of life experience. And I think that that's the reason why the Byron that we know emerges after he goes on this grand tour of Europe later, because for the first time in his life, he actually experiences things that are profound. He experiences things that are interesting, and he's able to take those experiences and insert it into his poetry. Now, when he wrote Fugitive Pieces, he didn't publish it publicly. He showed it to some of his friends, and he was advised not to release it because it was viewed as highly erotic and highly inappropriate. And that's by their standards. Like you read it now, and it's basically like I kissed somebody below a tree, and it's just like, oh, you sick fuck, you sicko. You can't put. Yeah, God would never allow us to put this in writing.
Yeah, if you're interested in smut, I would stay away from the historically significant forms of smut. They don't really hit that far on the power meter anymore. What was shocking, like the last time Richard and I talked, I brought up The Flowers of Evil by Charles Baudelaire, Les Fleurs du Mal. And that was one that it was like so scandalous they practically drove him out of the fucking city, Paris. And if you were caught with a copy of this book, it was like being caught with I don't know, the Satanist's Guide to Heavy Metal in the 1980s or something. And I read The Flowers of Evil, and I'm like, this is awesome poetry, but this is hardly blowing my skirt up.
Yeah.
So,
well, nowadays you can walk through a Target book section and find a story about a woman fucking 5 cowboys. Like it's just
standards have changed. We've how desensitized all this new media has made us to.
But you know what? Honestly, it did make us way more rad. It made us way cooler.
You know what really grinds my gears, Richard?
What grinds your gears, Will?
What really grinds my gears is all this discourse about violent video games and heavy metal music and what it's doing to young boys. But then again, there are 3 50 Shades of Grey books that have sold 190 billion copies. And those are now thoroughly obsolete by the other shit at Target. And, no one seems to be talking about the effect that that's having on 30-something women. And shit, man, I think we need to discuss it.
That's true. No,
and who could be more qualified than 2 guys in their 20s who have never read it?
Well, it's funny. Like people talk about like soft erotica, like it's desensitizing. But like Will, when you and I were kids, like in like the 5th grade, it was still kind of the old west of the internet where you don't have like AIs and stuff monitoring everything.
God, please don't take me down memory lane.
No, I was gonna say, I remember like in 5th grade, you go to it, or like 6th grade, you go to a kid's like birthday party, and it's a sleepover, whatever. You're having a good time. This happened to me so many times where you're all having a good time, and then eventually the parents go to sleep, and you're like, we're going to the family computer, and then you watch like drone footage and people in the cartel beheading people. Like I don't think that was good for us. I probably didn't.
Yeah, no, you actually did get satanic panicked. That's what happened to you. You were actually drawn in. No, this is a totally different version of that story, but like, when I was in middle school, I was a heavy user of the middle school library. We had a pretty decent, well-stocked library. And I cannot for the life of me remember why. I think it was because my family owned a lot of Stephen King books. It was just a large section of our library was Stephen King. And so I became curious about like, who's this fucking Stephen King guy? Like, why do people like him so much? And so at my middle school library, they had a full, rack of Stephen King. I mean, they had all the trade paperbacks of like Pet Sematary and Cujo and The Shining and the Tommy Knockers and all of it. And I remember I was just on a grid search because I read The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, which is really good, by the way. If you want a creepy like little girl lost in the woods story, it's super scary. At least it seems super fucking scary to me when I was 14. And but I'm just going down the list, and eventually I get to Gerald's Game, and Gerald's
middle school library.
Oh, that was not the craziest thing they had at a middle school library. They also had Spencerville, in which a man kidnaps his wife and chains her to a bed and repeatedly rapes her. And then in Gerald's Game, I'm going to spoil the first quarter of Gerald's Game. What happens is a husband and wife periodically go on like, a little like sexy honeymoon thing where they have like a cabin in the mountains. So they go up to their cabin in the mountains, and the husband has been getting more and more into bondage and has graduated from like ropes to toy handcuffs to finally like real police handcuffs. And so, he handcuffs his wife to the bed with, real ass fucking handcuffs and like leaves the keys across the room, and he starts having sex with her, and in the middle of that he dies. He has a heart attack. And his dying corpse just like lays on top of her as she's tied to this fucking bed, and she's fucked. I mean, she can't get to anything. There's nobody coming. Like she's gonna die of dehydration. And it's this scene where, and then every night she's visited by this fucking demon. And I'm reading this and I'm like 15 years old, and I'm just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
and so when people talk about like book bans, I'm like, do you guys know what's in just like Stephen King? Like there's no sense in banning any book.
There's also
there really isn't. There's no sparing a kid who is curious from reality. I mean, it's just, know. Well, anyway.
And I won't even go into it, but I'm sure your school library had it in there somewhere if it had all the other ones. And I'm not even going to say which one it is. We all know the scene.
I actually don't and don't want to know it. I actually never read for whatever reason. It was really long and the reviews were really bad, and I was like, I'm not going to read this.
I didn't read it either because I heard just about the same thing. It's just something I know of, and a lot of people in the audience are going to know what I'm talking about, but I won't elaborate on it. Another thing is, so really quickly, you're talking about Gerald's Game. Those are the scariest stories Stephen King ever wrote. The ones that are just kind of small scale. Because one that spooked me out really bad was Misery. Have you ever read that?
Misery was super good, and the movie is pretty good too.
Yeah, it is, with Kathy Bates.
I
think that's the actress. But no, that's
my favorite. Oh, sorry, I have to throw this in there. My favorite scene from Misery is when he has finally accepted that he's got to finish the book, and so he's got the typewriter in front of him, and he's just like hammering away. You see the fucking neurons firing, and it's playing Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto, and there's all these shots, cutting back and forth to like, the papers coming out of the typewriter and the snow drifts outside, and these overhead shots where he's just like chain smoking and drinking coffee. And I'm just like, this is the best depiction of like what it feels like to be a writer when it's working. Like when you're in the fucking zone, this is so fucking accurate.
I'm pretty sure that's what motivated him to write that book. Like, it's basically just a metaphor for how people are like, keep writing, Steven, do the thing. Make more books.
that is definitely a self-exploitation thing that he did.
Yeah. So anyways, let's hop back into the sweet sauce, the sweet material here. So just to get back to it, it's 1806. Lord Byron is 18 years old, and he tries to put out fugitive pieces, and it's deemed too inappropriate. Now, I'd like to kind of give an example, because there's one example I can think of. It's one poem that he actually omits from it, because he later republishes a lot of these poems in a series that he called Hours of Idleness. And here is an excerpt. It's line 9 and 10 from a poem he wrote called To Mary. Though not the first one who hast blessed me, yet I will own you were the dearest, the one unto my bosom nearest. So I conceived when I possessed thee, and smile to think how oft were done what prudes declare a sin to act is, and never but in darkness practice, fearing to trust the telltale sun. So on its own, that's with no context, it's kind of erotic, but like I said, by modern sensibilities, it's pretty tame. The reason why that was considered controversial is because Mary, the object of attention in this poem, is his cousin. A cousin who he kind of fell in love with when he was 10. I didn't read anything about them having any actual emotional interactions, actual romantic interactions with each other, but he was undoubtedly in love with her. And I think people were like dude, you need to fucking cool it. Because you need to take a chill pill and not write this shit down. Those need to be indoor thoughts. So, also, I just want to shout this out. I read it on the first draft of this podcast we did that we had to that we're doing this one to make up for. But I just want to say the title of one poem just because it's really creative and cool.
Yeah, let's have it.
It's to a lady who presented the author a lock of hair braided with his own and appointed a night in December to meet him in the garden.
And we agreed that this poem is just a I got laid poem. It's a post. It's an I got laid post.
Yeah, I won't even bother reading it like I did on the first one. Long story short, it's just very unimpressive. So speaking of unimpressive, like I said, he ends up taking out the poem to Mary and some of the other ones that were a little bit erotic, I think including the one that I just stated. And he republishes it as Pieces, Hours of Idleness. This is 1807 when he's 19. And it gets eviscerated. People, there's this one publisher called the Edinburgh Press, or the Edinburgh Review, I'm sorry, which was actually, they were Whigs. They were a Whig publishing company. So Byron is like, dude, we're all fam in here. Like, they're going to love this shit. And they give him such a scathing review that Byron goes home and just gets shithouse drunk and writes. I mean,
dude, when your propaganda allies won't even back you up, that's when you know your shit stinks. When the people who want to pump your basic message don't, you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah. When it's also like, dude, if you wanted to get the Whig publication on your side, maybe write one poem where you express those views instead of writing a bunch of shitty diary entries. But
all you had to say was, fuck the monarchy, the people are sovereign, liberty, equality, democracy, nothing? Okay.
Yeah, no. Yeah, he just gets his asshole ripped open, and he throws a temper tantrum and writes, there we go. He writes this one poem.
Richard saw me eating and immediately had to say, gets his asshole ripped open.
Well, you're eating a sandwich, so I think your asshole will be just fine. Unless you're drinking like a massive cup of coffee.
It's hummus? Pita and hummus, yeah.
You're going to have a pretty righteous shit later. I respect that. And I want the audience to know that Will's going to take an awesome shit later because he's having a hummus sandwich.
I've had no issues on that front. The probiotics are working.
Oh, yeah. Good to know. Probiotics and Metamucil. But yeah, so he publishes this poem called English Bards and Scotch Reviewers, where it's just him shooting from the hip. He's shitting on everybody. He's pissing everybody off. And after he does that, like that's kind of his mic drop, because right after he does that, this is 1809, by the way. So I want to say he's 20 years old. He's 2021. He, in the tradition of his peers, goes on what we call a great tour. Now, what a great tour is once
Grand tour.
I apologize.
Yep.
The grand tour is once a peer, a landowner, a noble, comes of age, they embark to Europe or wherever they please, usually Europe, to gain some life experience, which is a pretty cool practice. I liked reading about it. And naturally, Byron's going to do the same. But Byron has an issue. Most of the time, when British peers would go on a grand tour, they would go to either Italy or France. Now, we mentioned God Emperor Napoleon before. Byron can't go to either of those places.
This is not a Bonapartist channel. I'm sorry. Yeah. You're not going to get any sympathy for those comments.
Oh, no. Yeah. No,
we believe in Robespierre and the Reign of Terror. That's what we're about.
Oh, I agree. By the way, I'd like to establish, I am joking. I'm not some weird Dave's Vault 4chan user. I think Napoleon's a piece of shit. I just want to say that on the record. I think Napoleon's a piece of shit. Anyways, moving on. We're smack dab in the middle of the Peninsula War. And going to France or Italy is incredibly dangerous for a British person. So instead, Byron takes, of course, his BFF, John Hobhouse, and he takes like a servant, and they go to Portugal, because Portugal's at this point is friendly with England, and so it's a safe port to land in. From Portugal, he ends up going to Spain, and we won't go too into it, but there's lots of misadventures. He falls in love and has an affair with a noble lady. He almost gets in a gunfight at some point in Spain. Ultimately, their goal, by the way, is to go to Greece and Albania, because he wants to see the Ottoman Empire and both
listeners,
of those nations.
Just so you understand, the Grand Tour, still exists. Like, for example, American university students who want to quote unquote find themselves and get lost for a bit before they go to medical school or law school or have to do anything real. They're like, oh, I'm just gonna backpack through Europe for a summer and maybe I'll fuck around for a year. Like, I don't know. Like, I still got my parents' money. And so that's what the modern equivalent of the Grand Tour is. It's like, wow, I'm 23 and I'm in Florence and I'm at the Uffizi Gallery and all I do is eat fucking pasta and look at statues all day, and I'm really learning a lot about who I am. Also, I'm fucking everything in sight, and that part's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I know none of this is real. This is all like a dream or a vacation. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to make a lot of fucking money, like being a tax lawyer. And you're like, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's you travel abroad, you get so cultured, you're like, God, I'm so worldly, my intellect is so vast, and also my dad works for Lockheed Martin.
You go home, all those poor motherfuckers that you see back there, and they don't even know how to like correctly eat escargot. Like, they don't even know which fucking fork to use. You're like, Jesus, how do I fucking? Yeah, I need to elevate my circle.
There's a new lane that I've been enjoying on Facebook, and there's this class of people called wooks that are kind of funny. They're white people that become like super spiritual hippies, but kind of fake ones. Like, I joked about Lockheed Martin. I remember there's this one famous wook who makes like music or whatever, and yeah, it turns out that she's like completely super wealthy from inherited wealth. And it's just like, no wonder you're into van life, bitch. You can fucking pay, like, you have an endless stream of money, and you're trying to get us to do it too.
Wait. So, where does the term wook? First, can you spell that?
Wook, and I have no idea where it came from. I have no idea what it means, but it refers to white people, so I know it's okay to say on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that money cannot buy you, like, directly is a sense of adventure or meaning or specialness in your life.
Strip clubs in Mexico would beg to differ.
I mean, that's fun for a while, but
I'm just joking.
I mean, listen, we're all up for fun for a while, but yeah. I mean, how many go-arounds can you do before it starts to get a little stale? Before the shrimp basket starts to taste a little oily? Before you've seen this stripper before? Before the Coke starts not working or giving you really bad headaches, etc.
Now it sounds like you're speaking from personal experience.
No, actually,
and you wake up and your hands are trembling, and you when you're FaceTiming,
you're standing over a pool of blood and you don't know whose it is, and you blink again and you're naked on all fours in a field covered in shit.
And when you're FaceTiming
and you're
your
screaming
parents
at yourself, not again.
And when you're FaceTiming your parents, you have to take the phone out of your hand and put it on the table because they keep asking why the camera's shaking. Speaking of shaking hands and degeneracy, let's get back to Byron. So ultimately, Byron's goal is to get to the Ottoman Empire. Now, I mentioned before, or maybe I didn't, that when he was a kid at Newstead Abbey, his sense of escape, the way that he coped with his feelings was through reading, and he loved Greek epics, and he loved old like Arabic literature too, like Arabian Nights, like stuff that would be popular. He just liked adventures, and he specifically liked adventures in settings that were exotic by the perspective of a British person in the early 1800s. And so his main goal at this point is to go to Albania. Now, it's interesting because Albania is kind of in this point in time, kind of just a nothing country. It's not really a huge factor. People would just view it as another stretch of territory within the Ottoman Empire. But Byron wanted that. He wanted a real authentic viewing of this culture and these people. So in Spain, he ends up finding a British ship called the Spider, and he's able to convince them to give him a ride. And so he goes on, and at some point the Spider attacks another ship, and he stays on that one when they keep it. At some point, a bullet flies right past John Hobhouse's ear. And by the way, people, this is where John Hobhouse's fun ends. This is weird.
It's like it's been real, man, but I'm not trying to die on vacation.
Yeah, for him, he wanted it to be more like Western European. Like, he wanted to keep it to a traditional Grand Tour, and Byron was having fucking none of that. So they
there's two kinds of white guy when the natives start chanting. The one that, runs back to the fortress, and the one that starts chanting with them.
Yep.
And I think Byron was the one who started chanting with them.
Yeah. So Byron, eventually the spider gets close to Greece because that's where they're going to end up landing. And fun fact, something I'd like to throw in, I mentioned before that Byron died during the War for Greek Independence, which he contributed to. They sail past a place called Missolonghi, which eventually will be the area where Byron, at the age of 36, passes away on a boat. Which is kind of interesting, and it's interesting that he would have never known that.
Fucking sucks. Dying on a boat blows.
Of a disease on a boat.
Even worse. Fuck.
Yeah, it's not even drowning. You're just slowly sweating to death in a cabin somewhere.
I do not want to die on a boat. I do not want to die on a boat.
I want to die in a big, nice grassy field, all by myself. After my, when I'm like 97 years old, and my niece gets sick of having the same conversation, she'll just wheel me out there and just leave me in a nice field, and then she'll forget I ever existed, and it'll be great.
No, yeah, she'll wheel you out there in the wheelchair and then walk away, and the frame will just kind of stay on you for a second, and then you'll see her re-enter the frame with a double barrel shotgun and just
she's gonna
blow your head off. Yeah.
She's gonna push my wheelchair to the backyard and put a TB tray on my lap and put one open Sculpin IPA on it, and then at some point in mid-sip, I'm gonna hear the cocking of a shotgun. And I won't even turn around or hesitate. I'll just close my eyes and feel an unparalleled level of relief.
I won't even have time to burp. I'll just press my tongue to my palate one more time and experience those grapefruit hops.
Yeah, I'll put that grapefruit hops down, and just a smile will creep on my mouth, and then it's like the end of The Sopranos. The episode just ends. So our hero, our friend. By the way, this whole grand tour takes place between 1809 and 1811. So it'll basically be the ages of like 20 to 23 for Byron. So they end up landing in Greece, and they will spend more time there. But Byron's like, I need to get in the thicket. He's got a singular vision. So they hire guides, they hire people to help them, and they go in, and eventually they meet in Albania the leader of this kind of castle named Ali Pasha. I'm sorry. Ali Pasha, by the way, we could do an entire fucking episode on him. He lived an incredibly interesting life. He started off with no nobility in his lineage, as far as I know. Like he didn't own any land. He was just a bandit. And eventually, when Albania gets invaded by the Ottomans, he gets arrested. But since he has this track record of being a good leader, the Ottoman Empire is stretched thin. They need everybody they can get. And so he ends up getting hired to basically have his own war band and fight the Albanians. Basically do the exact same shit he was doing before. It's kind of like a privateer, like on behalf of the Ottoman Empire.
This is how in the feudal age in Europe, like this is how you get to be a baron. This is how you get to be a count,
Or in this case, a pasha. Because Ali Pasha, the Pasha part's not his real name, obviously. Pasha is just to signify his position. It's kind of like Khan, something like that. Although he wasn't a Khan, that's obviously a much higher position, but you get the point. So he meets Ali Pasha in 1809, still during the first year of his grand tour. And by the way, Ali Pasha's nickname is Vizier of the Three Tails, which is fucking awesome. It sounds like a Naruto character.
Tails like story, or tails like
a fox's tail.
Okay.
And I have no idea how he got that nickname. I couldn't find it.
That is like Eastern European Naruto. Yeah. That kind of rocks. I'm for that.
It's so sick. It's so fucking awesome. Ali Pasha. Oh, by the way. So back to Ali Pasha. I'll keep it brief. He ends up amassing a ton of wealth because when he's working for the Ottomans, he sets up a bunch of like racketeering operations and shit. He just starts extorting a bunch of the civilians. And so he makes enough money to independently fund a bunch of mercenaries and increase his own power without having to have troops given to him by the Ottomans. And eventually he's left in charge of a huge swath of territory. And that's kind of when Byron meets him. He's an older man at this point. He's got a long white beard. There's some awesome paintings of him too. I'd like to establish though that I don't necessarily like him because he is also a horrible rapist and a murderer. But he's an interesting character if you wanted to look at it Byronically. big surprise, Byron did look at him Byronically. This dude was guilty
he was
of
able
murdering.
He was able to overlook all the raping and murdering.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Which is not surprising for Byron.
Well, he'd already done it with Napoleon, so
Exactly. And
so how many hundreds of thousands of people are dead because of Napoleon? And right. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, here 1 second. I had to take a sip.
My man is drinking wine out of like what appears to be a like a Coke glass from the 1940s.
Actually,
it's kind of got that same geometry.
I don't know why I'm holding this up like the audience can see.
Where it's kind of thin at the bottom, and then it flares out like the bell of a trumpet, and then it comes back together.
I'm high class.
Like cut in these facets. Yeah.
I'm high class. I drink wine. Sure, it's out of a box, but it's still very
Richard,
high class.
You never did the grand tour. I mean, you never saw, the Louvre and the Parthenon, and you never got to fuck somebody who, like, you never said one word to them in their native language.
Yeah.
You just communicated entirely through alcohol and eye contact, your
and pee stuff.
Your subnormal dancing abilities. Yeah.
I'm an excellent dancer, by the way.
That is not true, audience.
I bust a fucking move, Will, and you know it's true. Do not slander my name like that. I am Lord Cynics, goddammit.
Yeah, okay. Well, go write a poem about it.
Dance.
Go cry and write a poem about it.
I dance. Have you ever seen those videos where it's at like a public school and it's in like, I don't know, like the cafeteria, and everybody's formed a circle around one neurotypical or one neurodivergent white boy that's busting a move, and everybody's cheering, but deep down that they're kind of just doing it because it's funny?
Yes.
I'm that guy when I dance.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right, we've come full circle on that. Anyway, so it's Byron's beautiful. On the grand tour. He's getting shot at. The boat that he paid to just be his boat has also become like a pirate ship while he's on it. His friend almost gets shot.
And he's loving every fucking second of it. And he also loves every second of Ali Pasha, because something that I was wondering, because eventually he also meets the emperor of the fucking Ottoman Empire, Mahmud, I believe that's how you pronounce it, the second. And I thought to myself while I was reading about it, like, how the fuck does he meet these people? Like, he's not, I mean, sure, he's like British nobility, but he's not like...
It's the way of the world, Richard. It's meeting people through other people.
Yeah. Well, I found
do you know anybody that has more money than you? Oh, really? You do? Can we go to his house? If you do this 3 or 4 times, you're going to meet some seriously rich motherfuckers.
Yeah. Well, it was also, I found out, custom for the Ottoman Empire that when nobility came, they were introduced to whatever leader. Like, they were the leader of that territory was alerted, and they were granted
being
audience.
Lord Byron from the British Empire, the most powerful country on earth, probably had a bit to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and also the thing about Ali Pasha, or Pasha, I don't know why I keep saying Pasha like I'm fucking Australian. Ali Pasha. He, you might wonder yourself, like, why is he so cool with British people when the Peninsula Wars are happening? And it's because he actually fought some skirmishes with the French, so he preferred the British way more at this point. So Ali Pasha was a very, like I said, Byronic figure. There was this story that I read where at some point Ali Pasha's daughter-in-law, so the wife of his son, came up to him and was like, there's rumor going around town that my husband had sex with this Greek woman. And so Ali Pasha brings the Greek woman in and finds out that his son had effectively assaulted her. And Ali Pasha is like, too bad, so sad. And ends up taking her and 17 of her friends and family members, sewing them into bags and throwing them into a body of water.
In other words, her and all the witnesses against his son, basically.
Yes. And so I say that Byron admired the Ottoman Empire, but it was in kind of a weirdly racist way. Like, it's Orientalism. He fetishized these practices because he kind of sees them as like the noble savage stereotype. Like, it is kind of a patronizing sort of admiration, but
like, these guys are behind us on the technological curve, and are in closer contact with our instincts and stuff. Yeah,
which is a romantic and also racist way of looking at it by modern standards. But Um, so you hear about that, right? And for most of us, internally, we kind of recoil from this guy. That is incredibly brutal. But no, Byron was scared by it, and he loved that sensation. And it also helped that Ali Pasha was basically his fucking sugar daddy. Like, one of the first things that Ali Pasha says about Byron is that he loves his small ears and small hands, his
Okay.
small white little hands.
Gay
So
alert.
gay, haha, gay alert, ding 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 ding. You're sitting up my
Very gay.
gaydar. But yeah, and it's funny, like it's
hardly brooking controversy by calling gay on Lord Byron, I know, but specifically I love your little ears and little hair. What?
Yeah.
What? Okay, all right.
Well, it's also part of Byron's fetishization of the Ottoman Empire is that women and young boys were kind of seen as equally accessible or like equally valid.
Well, this is another thing going back to like Greece and Rome is like in Greece and Rome, like, you know, young boys from the age of about 8 up were considered, you know, as sexually on the market as anybody.
Yeah.
And, you know, pederastry, and it's disgusting. And, you know, part of romanticism is like Rome, like the Roman Empire and the Romans and the Romantics is thinking that everything that contributed to the greatness of the Roman Empire was itself great. Like in the imagination of the Romantic era, like what made the Acropolis of Athens work, what made the Spartans and the Athenians and, you know, the Roman Republic and all of that work, at least in part on a cultural level, was homosexuality, free love, and pederastry, where younger you know, children are taken in as like apprentices by these older men who then like sexually abuse them repeatedly,
like Socrates.
And there's, you can read like Plato's Symposium. They talk about it like in great detail about the dynamics of like, should I try and seduce this little boy, or should I let this little boy seduce me? And you know, and in the imagination of people like Byron, that was necessary and good to make a top flight, you know, at least aristocracy, if not civilization. That doing that stuff is actually how you like prepare the next generation for leadership. Like one of the funniest lines in Plato's Symposium, the Symposium is a big drinking party where people go around making speeches in favor of love, and they talk about why they think love is good, and they present like 5 or 6 different versions. But one thing they all unanimously agree on is that the gay love between men is way better and more productive, and especially if you want to be a politician, it is by far the best way to go, because that was concerning yourself sexually with only the people that were active in politics at the time, right? And it's like, so like, why in so many cases would these older men choose younger boys instead of women their own age or whatever, or even men their own age as sexual partners? And it's like, well, it's because A, they believed women were trash and disgusting, and you know, we're not the equal of men, you know, second-class citizens, the weaker sex,
Stinky.
all of that. The problem with like having, you know, an entirely patriarchal view and being attracted to women at the same time is that on the one hand, you tell yourself that women are something less than men in terms of intellect and skill and basic human dimensionality. And then, but at the same time, like you need them and are attracted to them. And so that's why in like Plato's Symposium, they thought it was better to be attracted to men if you're a man. Because it's like, well, it's the craving of the noble for itself rather than something not of itself.
So
all these things are just, you know, historical cabinet of curiosity shit to us now. At least I fucking hope. But
can I clarify something?
Sure.
So basically what you're saying is the philosophy of pederasty is that boys rule and girls drool?
That is part of it. Yeah. That is certainly part of it.
Well, I'm going to go on the record here, and you know what? I might catch some heat for this. It's very controversial. I think pederasty is gross. I think it's not cool. I'm going to put the not cool stamp on it.
Yeah.
I'm spitting conscious bars. I know I am. I'm a poet, like you said. I think it's nasty. But
I love the
Byron,
clarity. Every bar is charity.
every bar is charity, exactly. Byron would disagree with that, though. He would say, Richard, you're not spitting conscious bars. And to kind of prove that, at some point he's having a correspondence with some homies back in England, and he's talking. He's like, I've been writing a lot, and I've got this real cool idea. I want to shoot it by you. He's like, I'm thinking of writing this piece called Sodomy Simplified, or Pederasty Proved to be Praiseworthy by Ancient Authors in Modern Practice. And his friend writes back to him and he's like, don't do that. His friend writes back to him and is like, Byron, what the fuck? Don't say that shit to me, dude. I don't want to hear that.
That's what I said to you when you tried to pitch me your screenplay where you seduce Christina Hendricks.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's weird. I've been mailing it to Quentin Tarantino, and now I have to pay him money, and I can't get within 250 feet of him. I don't know why he didn't see that our love was true and that I'm a genius.
I mean, it's the fate of all great work to be initially ignored. So,
That's true.
You're on the right path. It is also the fate of all terrible work to be initially ignored. So actually, I don't think we know that much.
I'd like to think that it was a great work and that I am just a misunderstood genius. And after I die, they will posthumously make that movie.
I think there's hope for you. I think so.
I think I will. I
think Ryan Gosling will play you. Yeah,
I hope so.
They'll call it Drive 2. It'll be great. Christina Hendricks will come back from the dead.
Just my life. How many short films on YouTube do you think there are that are just that? Just a dude who's like, his mustache doesn't connect to the bottom of his fucking beard. He's wearing the scorpion jacket. It's on like an iPhone, and he doesn't say a fucking word. He's driving his Toyota to sell, but he's trying to whip it around the parking lot, and it's so badass.
You made a few of those. That's why you're using this example.
No, I'm not creative enough, dude. I will say, I think we mentioned in the last episode, I'm so fucking glad that I was not a creative kid, because like every once in a while I've got a buddy, Taylor, and he and I will just like send each other videos that make each other laugh. Like there will be a kid online that's like, in a fight, Luigi would beat Waluigi instantly. It's canonical. And Taylor and I are like, ha, 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 what an embarrassing idiot. And then I just think back to when I was playing Sonic Adventure 2 as a kid, and like the shit that I probably would have just put a camera in front of myself and said would have ruined my life. It's pure luck.
I had a very interesting experience. So, audience, if you don't know, I've worked in education in and out in different ways for the last 5 years. And so like I was substitute teaching I think it was a 3rd grade class. Yeah, it was a 3rd grade class. So that's 8-year-olds basically. And I was just doing the like morning warm up where we all like sit in a circle and we ask a few kind of fun questions. We just like get to know each other. It's going great. And one of the warm up questions is like, what do you want to be when you're grown up, right? Or what do you like to do for fun? Either or. And this one girl said, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be on YouTube. And then I just watched like this ripple go through like the other 20 kids where they're like, oh my God, me too. And as it went around the circle, it's just like kid after kid was just like, I want to make YouTube videos. I want to make YouTube videos. I want to make YouTube videos. And so I'm like, okay, like stop, right? Because these are 8-year-olds. And I'm like, all right, put your hand up if you are on YouTube and TikTok. And they like everyone puts their hand up. And I'm like, okay, now how many of you make YouTube videos or TikToks? More than half the class put their hand up. And I'm like, so like, I'm asking you guys, like, you have an account, you have a phone, you film yourself doing something, dance, song, whatever. And then you put it out there, and more than half of the kids in this 3rd grade class were like, yeah. And I'm realizing like, oh, well, that's their audiences all around them. Right. And I'm like, God, like kid socialization on the internet. And I don't know if I have a point other than just to be shocked by that fact.
Yeah. Well,
but yeah,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like I will make fun of like moms against violent video games, like until the sun goes down. But I hear that, Will, and I'm like, that should be illegal. It should be illegal to post a video of yourself until you're like 18.
You should have to be at least like 15 to post on the internet, I think. Just my opinion, but whatever. back to Byron and his friend advising him that maybe he shouldn't write an essay during the Victorian era, for the record, about how pederasty is fine. Sorry, this is the Regency era.
Regency, yeah, but it's at kind of the twilight of the Regency era. Yeah, fuck it all. Basically, Regency equals romantic period. Victorian equals don't touch your penis or you'll go to hell. And so,
okay, so they haven't clamped down all the way yet, but
part of the story is that they are clamping down. Like I said, this is kind of the coming at the end of the Regency era where people are getting a little prudish. I mean, they always were, but getting more prudish. But yeah, so we've talked a bit about Ali Pasha. Eventually, so like Byron's basically his sugar baby, but eventually Byron moves on and he goes to Greece because, he loves those stories. And at some point, he and Hobhouse go to the Parthenon. And it's when they approach it, they're horrified. From their perspective, they've only ever read about it, maybe seen a picture drawn about how it's speculated to have looked in the past. By this point, it's a fucking crater. About 100 years before they get there, at some point there's it was Greece was getting attacked, and a cannon shot a cannonball, and it went to the Parthenon. And unfortunately, the Parthenon was storing a shit ton of black powder. So that cannonball hits the Parthenon and turns it into a pile of fucking rubble.
Got a critical hit on the Parthenon. Yeah, a Death Star exploding, proton torpedo or whatever.
Yeah, the Venetians rolled a fucking nat 20 on the Parthenon and just obliterated it. Obliterated it so hard that the DM just had to decide there was black powder in there because that's the only way it'd make sense.
Also, audience, I know at least some of you have been to the British Museum and have seen the Elgin marbles and stuff. And once you see those, it's pretty obvious that there's not really a lot left at the Parthenon because they took the cool shit that was still remaining. Although, these days, the Parthenon Museum in Athens is like an active excavation archaeology site. And when you go into it, I've never been personally, but I've seen videos where when you go in, there's a glass floor and you can look down about 20 feet as you're in the museum. And below you in real time are archaeologists digging shit out of, the foundation. And you can watch them excavate, the artifacts from the Parthenon site, from the Acropolis. So it's pretty cool and so forth. But yeah, no, like, a lot of these ruins are ruins. Like I went to Hadrian's Wall, and it's very cool. And like if you have a chance, if you're in Scotland, you should go to Hadrian's Wall and check it out. But like Hadrian's Wall is more like Hadrian's fucking sidewalk at this point. There ain't really a wall to speak of. There's a few like dug in areas where you can see a foundation, and you can walk along what is now, quote, the top of the wall. But really, like, it's a pile of rocks in a field. And a pile of rocks in a field can be a very cool thing if you know history and if you are just kind of immersed in the aura of the place that you're in. But don't go there expecting it to look awesome. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the Elgin marbles, because when Byron sees that, he views the state that it's in, or he blames the state that it's in on Lord Elgin. Byron never met this guy, but he fucking hated him instantly. And obviously, a part of it is a little bit of plundering, but also the locals had been burning the marble too. Like there were a lot of different factors. The explosion. You could blame a whole lot of people, but Byron blames Lord Elgin and eventually completely later slanderously writes about him. So Lord Elgin, I don't know if you knew this, was actually cuckolded by Nelson.
No, I didn't.
And he also had kind of a degenerative illness where like his nose was starting to kind of fall off. And so
I hate it when that happens, dog. That's the fucking worst. The nose rot disease.
Oh yeah.
Don't ever get it.
Living in any era before like I don't know, anesthesia, not worth it. It's just everything bad can happen and you can't cure it. But it's funny because Byron, he fucking hates Elgin. He claims he totally slanders him and says that his wife got syphilis from Nelson. And that's why his nose is rotting off.
Yeah.
Which is not true. Byron's a fucking dickhead. He has no proof of this, but he just slam dunks him so fucking hard.
Yo, unforgettable 90s rap battle moments. Oh Holy my God, shit.
Yeah. But yeah, so he sees the Parthenon and is just fucking like heartbroken. But while he is in Greece, I mentioned that he loves Greek legends, and one of the legends that he loved was the myth of Leander and Hero. And I'll summarize it very briefly for the listeners. If you aren't familiar with this myth, Leander and Hero were lovers separated by a body of water. Hero lived in this like tower, and so every single day at night, because she was, there's probably like 3 miles of water in between them. I was looking up which part of the Hellespont Leander was supposed to have swum in, and obviously they can't clarify it, but they guessed that he was probably swimming about 3 miles or 5 kilometers. So Leander at night would swim over to the tower, and it's dangerous because you could get lost at night. So what Hero would do is she would light a lantern. Now they do this often. Their love's very passionate and profound. And then eventually winter comes, and they both agree it's too dangerous to swim across the Hellespont. But one day, Hero lights the torch, or she lights the lamp anyways, and because she misses him, and so Leander swims in her direction. But eventually, a strong winter gust of wind blows out the lantern, and he gets lost and dies at sea. And she recognizes that happens and throws herself out the window into the ocean. Their bodies wash up onto shore. They're embracing, and it's a very sad but beautiful story. And Byron loved it. So I mentioned at the beginning of this episode that Byron had a club foot. The one sport that he was incredibly talented at was swimming. And so he actually swims about 3 miles on the Hellespont, which I don't know if anybody listening has done long distance swimming. When I was in high school, my summer job was as a lifeguard. And to become a lifeguard, you have to swim for 2 miles, at least in the test that I took. It fucking sucks. It was 1 mile less than Byron, and I thought I was going to die. And I was doing it in a public pool, not in an open body of water with waves and shit.
Yeah, I thought I was pretty cool when I was 17. I managed to swim a mile in a lake, and I got done with that. I was like, I don't ever fucking want to do that again. Yeah, and that was 1 mile, dude. So
my entire body ached after those 2 miles. It fucked me up. And Byron does it. He's got people spotting him on a boat, but he doesn't have any assistance. They're just there to make sure he doesn't die or get like lost. And I gotta say, pretty impressive. Points to Byron. Now, it's around this time that John Hobhouse has to go back to England. And Byron's kind of stoked about that because we've mentioned before that Byron's exploring his sexuality. And to John Hobhouse's credit, he doesn't seem to be particularly judgmental about it, but it does seem to make him anxious, mainly because Byron's his best friend. And he's like, if word of this comes back to England, you could be killed. You could be like bound in the town square and had tomatoes and shit and stuff thrown at you. Like it was very, very dangerous. It was a very dangerous time to be homosexual in England. In fact, it would be a dangerous time to be homosexual in England until like the mid 70s. And even then it still was
1970s for the audience.
Yeah, the 1970s. I think the 70s are around when Britain legalized like sodomy.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Stonewall was 1968, so yeah, okay.
But yeah, before then, I mean, in the first episode, Will, you brought up Alan Turing. If you want to tell that story again, a very tragic story.
Most people know Alan Turing for breaking the Enigma cipher during World War II and being it's sort of like the British equivalent of Oppenheimer, where he was placed in charge of this large government project called Bletchley Park. It was a team of mathematicians and engineers and linguists, and they tried to break the German encryption machine. And eventually they succeeded and produced some of the most important intelligence of the war. Probably without this, Montgomery would have lost to Rommel in North Africa, because Montgomery was able to get all of Rommel's field reports forwarded to him unencrypted. And without that tactical advantage, I don't know that Montgomery beats Rommel in sustained tank warfare. Anyway, so there's a lot of shit like that too. But after the war, Alan Turing, who was gay his whole life, gay and probably autistic, he has like a sort of the British would have termed it an indiscretion with a young man who happens to be, I think, like part of the peerage, like part of the nobility. The third son of, Count whoever, or, Earl this, that, the other. And they take him to trial for sodomy, and they convict him, and they said, okay, you have a choice, which is we'll either give you chemical castration, where we basically inject you with like terrible, terrible fucking poisons until like your penis and your balls stop working entirely. Or I think the alternative was death or life in prison, something like that. And Turing chose chemical castration. This is also what happened to Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was, in my opinion, kind of a better writer than Lord Byron and way smarter. And but was also like, it was one of those open secret things where it's like, okay, well, like we all know that Oscar Wilde is gay, but he hadn't gotten caught specifically fucking anybody. And then once again, like he fucked around with some kid who was like, the son of some, earl. And when that came out in the newspapers, something had to be done about it. Otherwise, that earl's kid would lose his, marriageability, basically. And so Wilde went to trial, got convicted, got thrown in prison, and wrote De Profundis about how much it sucks to be in prison for being gay. Yeah. And then proceeded to basically die alone and sad, a broken man. So yeah, that is a little pocket history of the English government being unspeakably fucking brutal to gay men.
Well, yeah. And I don't know if you mentioned this, but one big thing is that very tragically Alan Turing took his own life. And that was after this, because that's chemical castration is a very physically and emotionally traumatizing experience.
Yeah, it's fucking horrible.
Yeah, well, and John Hobhouse had those concerns about Byron, but he has to go back, and Byron would end up spending about another year. Less than a year, but he would spend more time in his grand tour. At some point, he meets, as I mentioned before, Mahmud II, who, by the way, also is like, "You're a beautiful man." Ooh, hey there, Byron.
Yeah.
Hey there, sailor.
Little eyebrow wiggle. Yeah.
Well, he's also kind of a sugar daddy, and it's funny. Byron, it would eventually. So after Hobhouse leaves, Byron is also, sometimes he will dance in women's clothing and dance with people, and it's all just part of, like I said, just being in an environment where he can actually explore himself, unlike Regency and later Victorian England. But as well, and also funny enough, speaking of dressing androgynously, that will actually motivate one of his later poems, Don Juan. Now, I do need to clarify something. There's a reason why I'm saying Don Juan, because I know that a lot of you are saying, like, Richard, isn't it Don Juan? Yes, it is, if you're talking about the Spanish legend. When Byron writes Don Juan, he intentionally pronounces it like that because it's a joke about how British people can't pronounce shit right in foreign languages. So just want to put that out there. But there's a scene in Don Juan where he ends up going to the Ottoman Empire, and because Don Juan's just a series of misadventures. It's the series of misadventures of a man who kind of accidentally finds himself in very erotic environments. And it's kind of flipping the myth upside down, because the original myth of Don Juan is this man who is just a libertine. He's constantly getting women. He's the most charming and handsome man in the world. And Byron's take on that is that it's kind of just a series of unfortunate events. It's just always an accident. And in this case, he has to dress like a woman and hide in with the harem. And so, that's you. something you'll notice about all of Byron's most successful pieces is that they are a lot of the times semi-autobiographical. For example, also in Don Juan, at some point their ship crashes, and Don Juan is, well, long story short, they end up having to eat somebody. But that's a story that kind of mimics a story that happened with his grandfather when his grandfather was younger. His grandfather, Foul Weather Jack, was his nickname. There's a lot of cool nicknames with the Byrons. His ship crashed and he had to eat his childhood dog to survive. Like, and Byron injects these experiences into his writing. And I mentioned before that his first poems kind of sucked, and I think that that's why. It's because his best poems have his most interesting experiences injected into them. His Before the grand tour, he didn't have interesting experiences to inject.
Yeah, you gotta have some life behind you. You've got to have some kind of existential backing. You can't just like string, pretty sounding fucking phrases together. You actually have to have something like, I don't know, a perspective. Like I can't remember which journalist said this. It might have been Hunter S. Thompson or somebody, but was talking about like, all these writers trying to go out and like do journalism. It's like they came straight out of fucking, journalism school, J school, and they're just waving microphones around. They don't have they haven't earned the right to have a perspective yet.
Yeah.
Like they're straight out of the fucking mold. Their stuff is drac. There's no personality behind it. And it's like, yeah, it's like I'm sorry, but like if you're trying to write something straight out of college right now, like think about it. Think about it and think about cooling that shit off until you've had a few more rides around the carousel. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, and also embrace new experiences. And it doesn't need to be a grand tour, because obviously that's not financially realistic for a lot of people. Just leave the house more often. Like, just try and interact with people,
neighbors.
go to parties.
That's an adventure.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned Hunter S. Thompson, because 3 of his most successful works were what you were talking about, experiencing interesting things and writing about them. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, when he writes about riding around with the Hells Angels, and when he writes about almost becoming the sheriff of that town in Colorado, like, whose name escapes me right now.
But we are going to do the Hunter S. Thompson episode. We've talked about it, so it's on the queue.
We've talked about it. We specifically want to do an episode just on him trying to become sheriff of Colorado, or not sheriff of Colorado. Jesus Christ, sheriff of that town. It's a very fun story.
That's where he shaved his head bald so he could accuse his opponents of being long-haired hippies, right?
Yep. Yeah. his very conservative opponents. He's like, you hippie. You know what? I would venture as far as to say that in his own right, Hunter S. Thompson was very Byronic as well.
Well, yeah, and I've seen I think there's a documentary about Thompson called Gonzo, where they interviewed people who knew him, and they all basically said the same thing, which was like, yeah, I mean, the persona, the being a party clown, like, yeah, he was brilliant, and he certainly wrote some good shit. But he was also just completely out of control and fucked up, and did a lot of really, really harmful shit to all of us people who knew him.
Yeah,
like we all kind of wished that he would get his act together.
Well, in Fear and Loathing, and who knows how much of his writing is true and how much of it isn't. At least in Fear and Loathing, it's mostly just you kind of take it at face value and allow yourself to be entertained by it. But at some point in that book, he mentions trying to pimp out a 16-year-old that his lawyer had fallen in love with. Like, I think that's part of what makes him Byronic, because something about Lord Byron, part of the legacy that he's had is being one of the first.
We could subtitle this show "Bad Role Models."
Yeah,
Osho, Byron, Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah. Well,
like they're these guys that like people hold up as like, oh, we should strive to be like this dude or whatever. It's like, oh, really? No, sorry.
What they all were. And I'm sure every episode that I'm going to be on in this series is going to be kind of like this. What they were. I was joking about Byron's admiration of Napoleon earlier as kind of vaguely hypocritical, but and then I mentioned why he likes these people. On some levels, I get that, because that's what I think entertains most of us. Because like I said, Osho was not a purely bad man. Osho was complicated, he did a lot of bad things, but he also was multifaceted. And Byron did a lot of bad things, but he was, once again, multifaceted. He also created a lot of beauty. Maybe not in his relationships with women, but like
guys, we wouldn't be wasting time talking about a fucking guy from, the 19th century, the early 19th century, if he didn't actually do something really fucking remarkable. And Byron's poetry is remarkable.
Yeah.
Manfred is remarkable. She Walks in Beauty is remarkable. I haven't read Don Juan, but I do want to. And then Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is super interesting as well. So just throwing those out there.
So a lot of comedy comedy is very specific, right? About experiences. A lot of comedy from just 100+ years ago, I read it and I'm like, a Wikipedia article could explain to me why this is funny, but I'm not laughing.
Don Juan, like Shakespeare comedy. No, hit and miss.
It's funny. There's an episode of King of the Hill.
Mostly miss.
Yeah, there's an episode of King of the Hill where like Bobby farts and his classmates laugh, and he starts to like making people laugh, and he insists that he wants to go on he wants to be tutored in comedy. So eventually, Hank's like, oh, okay, whatever, and he puts him in, but he actually puts him in like a classical comedy class. So like he's monologuing Shakespeare and nobody thinks it's funny and it's just weird and uncomfortable. And that's exactly what it is.
Think about how fast humor is evolving right now, right? Yeah. The shit that makes, like young Gen Z kids laugh has almost entirely diverted from, the heckin' pupper adorable millennial shit. So that like we've already created a branch in the timeline there. But with with Shakespeare, like one thing that pretty much all Shakespeare interpreters point out is that the comedy doesn't really slap anymore as comedy, but the tragedies make sense forever. The tragedies, you're always like, okay, dude killed his mom, and then her lover's kid kills him. You're like, okay, like I kind of get this.
Stories.
Revenge stories.
Timeless.
Yeah,
and will never change. But So the punchline of that King of the Hill episode is at the end of it, Bobby's doing this like stage play, and his tutor's like rubbing his hands together. He's like, "This is amazing and intellectual and hilarious." Nobody's laughing. Hank has his face in his hands, and Bobby, like I said, is doing his little Shakespeare thing. And at some point, he pauses because he knows he's bombing. And he just farts on stage, and everybody laughs. Like that's. I will say, some humor is timeless. I love the graffiti in Pompeii, where it's like there's stuff it's just like a picture of a penis, or like Julius Caesar's gay.
No, people have been drawing dicks like on like the equivalent of public bathroom stall walls like for over 2,000 years at least, right? Probably longer. Like totally vulgar obscenity. I mean, even in Shakespeare, like there's lines about just like, haha, I fucked your mom in Shakespeare. And it's some things never change.
So anyways, we're kind of starting to get somewhat close to the conclusion of this episode. So
we're 2 hours in, so let's land the plane here and call it a day.
So, he meets with Mahmud II. He has his adventure there, but unfortunately, as I'm sure you all understand at this point, he had financial struggles and he was just out of money. He had to go back. And it made him very profoundly depressed. He loved his grand tour, and he also loved the Ottoman Empire. Eventually, his first hit, the thing that puts him on the map, he writes a poem called Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Child being spelled Childe, which kind of connotates like a young noble, like going out into the world.
Fancy kid.
Yeah, and it's funny. In the book, he mentions, he's like, this isn't about me, I promise. And he knows, like it's a joke. It's Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is literally just it's Byron's experiences going on his grand tour put into an epic poem. And there's a line in it that kind of reveals his love and admiration for the Albanians and the Ottomans and his time there. At some point when Childe Harold goes to Albania, this is in Canto 2, stanza 42. I had to write that down. By the way, a canto is like an episode or a chapter in poetry. The only reason I need to clarify that is because I didn't know that before I started looking into all this stuff. So I assume that there will probably be listeners who don't know that either. So he writes, The Albanians in their dresses white and gold, with silver-studded belts and sabers curled, and shawls inlaid with gold and flowery fold, and kaftan richly broidered were unfurled. Amidst the grove of bay and myrtle tree, a race of warriors, proud and fiercely free. And he's basically describing Turkish soldiers. Because to be fair, if you've seen some depictions of how they dress, it's pretty fucking fly. In fact,
it's pretty fly. It's pretty dripped out.
For the people listening right now, if you go into Google Images and look up Lord Byron, one of the first pictures you'll see, he's in Ottoman garb, and it's a drip. It's a good fucking painting.
Looking it up. I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, he's got a little mustache going too. It's a good look.
Oh yeah, I see him now. Yeah, he's got the wiry mustache. He's carrying a sword. He's got some silk turban thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying to see his little tiny ears. Damn, he does have little tiny ears.
Will, are you?
He's got
an awakening of sorts.
I'm lusting after those connected earlobes.
I'm not gonna lie, dog. Reading some of Don Juan and some of his other writings, I was lusting a little bit. I literally had to physically grab my right arm from cutting my pubes off. It was strange.
Well, that's the difference between poetry and smut is how many hands you read it with.
By the way, I just realized an hour and 58 minutes in that we've never clarified the context on cutting pubes off. It's probably a little confusing and weird.
Why don't you just take us through that, and we'll call that one.
I can summarize it in 15 seconds. Later, when Lord Byron, and this is going to be episode 2 stuff, when Lord Byron gets insanely famous, people are obsessed with him. Speaking of lusting, he's writing erotic fiction that, like I said, by modern standards is somewhat tame. But like, if you lived in an incredibly repressive society, I can see why it's very indulgent, because it's very tasteful and crafted, but it has these undertones of sexuality that like people just didn't say out loud. And so there were noble women who just went insane. It's kind of like, like I said, Byron has this legacy of being the first celebrity, and I think this is part of it. What makes him a celebrity as opposed to a historical figure is the fanfare and the smut of it. It's very pulpy. And at some point there's a lady who sends him a letter, but she trims off some of her pubic hair and puts it in the letter. And later Byron would talk about all this fanfare and say, oh, it's so bothersome, it's so obtrusive. I don't like it at all. Do you want to know why we know about all this fanfare?
I'm guessing he collected it and wrote about it.
Yeah, it's because he kept it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
instead of being like fuck this and throwing it in the fire, just be like, oh, it pains me so, and then dropping it into a fucking chest with 800 other letters just like it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is that's like, it's so Lord Byron, because Lord Byron knows that the cool thing to say is just so it bothers me that I'm so fucking sought after sexually. It's just irritating. But deep down,
what a hassle.
And that's the thing is, and I'll wrap this up soon. Here, we can get back to that in a second. Long story short, Lord Byron runs out of money, has to go back to England. And by the time he comes back to England is, I mentioned before, the Regency era is ending and we're kind of going into the Victorian era. And he is in an England that is even more conservative than it was before. Like at some point, John Hobhouse, and John Hobhouse talks to him and is like, dude, I know that you were free and liberated in Europe. You got to keep that shit on the fucking DL in England now. Like there was this story where there was a place where gay men would meet up and it got busted. And all of them were stuck in the gallows and people just threw shit at them. And that's the thing is like,
you mean
like
the stockades, where you're bent over and you have like your arms clamped to this piece of wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like John Hobhouse, and like I said, I've never gotten the impression from reading him that John Hobhouse was that judgmental. It's more just like he just cares for his friend and is like, you're going to be in jail or worse if you reveal these experiences to people. Which, by the way, the idea that Lord Byron was a homosexual was highly suppressed until somewhat recently. That's more of a modern perspective on him. His friends did not show people a lot of their correspondence for a while because they were scared for him. But anyways, he comes back to England and he's very depressed because, he's, for the first time in his life, he's been truly free and independent. And now he's coming back and he's like, he doesn't have anything to show for it. Sure, he's written these poems, but he doesn't know he's capital L, capital B, Lord Byron yet. He's kind of, in his own viewing, a loser. And a couple of things happen that make him even more depressed. 3 important people in his life die when he comes back. His mother, who, obviously he has a lot of resentment towards her, but the death of a parent is complicated nonetheless. Charles Matthews, aka the Methodist, dies. I believe he drowns. And John Edelstein, the choir boy that he fell in love with, dies as well. And wait, let me really quickly. Okay, good. I was just clarifying that was John Edelstein. Yeah, so John Edelstein dies, and he has this. Yeah. Were you taking a break or what?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So he's very depressed that he lost all these people, but his new poetry that he wrote on the road, so to speak, is being regarded. It's getting a lot better reception than Hours of Idleness and Fugitive Pieces got. And so at this point, he kind of has a friend who's an unofficial publisher of his named Robert Dallas. And Byron gives him a bunch of his poems, and Robert Dallas is like, it's just not cutting it. He's a good editor. He's a good publisher. He's honest with him. He's like, this shit's not cutting it. And Byron is like, I don't know. I've been writing this thing. Maybe you'll like it. And it shows it to him. And that thing he showed him was Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Robert Dallas later writes back to to Byron and says, like, since you gave me this shit, I haven't been able to put it down. This is incredible. And it makes sense why, because that's the first time that Byron's really writing what he knows. It's almost exactly what he experienced with some drama thrown into it, but it's compelling. There's a reason why I'm telling you about this guy's life. It's very interesting, and it's also written very well. Now, I don't know if I would advocate for the listeners out there to listen to read or listen to Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, because it's very dense. It is fucking big. And if you want to do Lord Byron, start off with either Manfred or start off with Don Juan, because those are actually like, and then like I said, I'm not even a guy who likes more antiquated writing like that a whole lot, but I found it very engaging. But anyways, eventually Lord Byron decides to publish Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, and it explodes. Immediately, it's not necessarily immediately, but like within weeks, it becomes this sensation in England. And suddenly, the way the Lord Byron phrases it is, I laid my head down, I went to sleep, and I woke up a star, a celebrity, which is hyperbolic but pretty true. Like, and he would go on to be the talk of the walk for years. And he will engage with controversy. We'll see a lot more examples of him being a really shitty guy. He'll write a ton of great poetry, and it's going to be gripping and awesome, but we got to wrap it up. And so we're going to continue all of that in episode 2, when Byron truly becomes a celebrity and a star.
Yeah, and we're going to get to see all of his bad behavior as he becomes the object of affection for tens of thousands of lonely, horny British women trapped with their husbands who are like fucking 30 years older than them. Yep. And it's going to be quite the tongue wagger for Byron.
Yeah, you said tongue wagger.
I was thinking more in terms of gossip, but yeah, we could apply that one too. All right, well that's it, audience. So Richard, say goodbye.
Bye. Goodbye, everybody. Peace out. you.